Dau cuvântul în continuare domnului George Lupascu Pruna, Hofstede Insights, de la biroul din Ucraina, cu o analiză despre impactul diferențelor culturale în businessul internațional. Vă rog.
It is a pleasure to have seen all the speakers before me and to connect them with the cultures from where they come and to see how they express their misunderstandings, also on the Romanian culture. Now, a little bit about myself. I have more than 10 years experience in leadership and corporate psychology, and for the past 2 years, I've been licensed as an intercultural practitioner and organizational transformer by the Hofstede Insights Institute. At my core, I am an engineer, which means that I keep these vague things called cultural differences very practical and very pragmatic. So what I do and what we do in Hofstede Insights is offer solutions, offer variants to the problems that might be confusing the different business people, the different ministries, the different diplomats. As I told you, I'm part of this Hofstede Insights organization. It was an organization created by Professor Geert Hofstede, a Dutch professor. You've seen Jacques in the morning, he's my colleague. He also discussed about the culture, so now it is my pleasure to reinforce some of the things that he has mentioned. We are around 100 consultants all over the world. We touch more than 1,000 companies and more than 20,000 people in their cultural pitfalls. Now, you might wonder, why was there a need to do a research in culture? Why was there this need to create this new discipline? Well, first of all, it's the top executives from US and Europe mentioned cultural differences as their second biggest challenge, wherever they worked as expats. Now, the second thing where the money really are lost is in the cross-border mergers and acquisitions, because it was researched and it was found out that in more than 50% of the cases, a cross-border merger fails. And in 80% of these cases, it's because of cultural differences. It's only in 17% of the cases that the cross-border merger, in which companies from different countries put resources together, they actually bring value. Now, in this database, we also have companies from Belgium, from the Flemish Belgium, and from the Netherlands. And as you might know, they speak the same language, but their cultures are very different. Let's go to the core of cultural differences, of how we in Hofstede Insights use culture. Please, only if you are awake, please tell me which culture do you think are described here? They are relaxed, friendly, spontaneous, uninhibited, emotional, impulsive. Any ideas? Some more? What? So, South American? South, Good, good. What about here? They are always in a hurry, serious, restrained, composed, methodical. Germans, Japanese, Netherlands, okay. Well, the thing is, in both cases, it's about an American. Only the point of view is different. In the first case, a Japanese perceives the Americans to be like that. In the second case, a Mexican perceives the Americans to be like that. So what you need to know is that there is this cultural relativism. So we all have our point of view, we all have our culture, and we judge the other cultures and we interact with the others based on our education, based on our forming. So what is culture? The way people usually use it and the way it was brought throughout the day, it's like in the civilization, its art, its evolution. The way we use it is in the anthropological way. It's the collective programming of the human mind by which one group differs from another group. Now, that means that we should not apply culture to individuals. Culture makes sense only on groups of people. And then it doesn't make sense in one group that is not compared to another group. If you are from Romania and you work only in Romania, you interact only with Romanians, cultural differences don't really make sense. They start to make sense when you start interacting with people from abroad. And you get into some negotiations, you get into some discussions, into some projects that you see, they don't work out. I cannot really deliver them in the traditional way. Let me tell you some stories. I will tell you 3 stories. Dane went to China to negotiate. He wanted to expand his business. He found a new partner. And after a long, long flight, he landed and the Chinese prepared a dinner for him. They invited him for a dinner. He knew that it's impolite to refuse it, so he agreed. Now, the Chinese brought him to dinner, and with his individualistic culture, he started making chit-chat. It was very uncomfortable for him to sit in silence at the dinner, during the dinner. The Chinese were smiling and nodding politely, saying, yeah, By the end of the dinner, being exhausted and having this need, this comfort to fill in the void of the sound space, he gave up his whole negotiation strategy. In the end, it was by the second day when the official negotiation should have happened, it didn't make sense anymore. The Chinese knew everything that he has in his negotiation plan. Let me tell you another story. Some Americans went to Mexico to strike a deal. They had everything prepared, they did a negotiation, they signed the negotiation papers, the contract, everything was fine, and the Mexicans had a party, threw a party for them and for the deal. At the party, they were very restrained. They came there, they cheered, they drink a little, but overall they didn't have as much fun as the Mexicans would have expected. Consequently, the Mexicans broke the deal, because for them it's not just the relationship on the paper, it's also the personal relationship that matters. If you are going to have a deal, we're going to also have fun. We have to establish some good interpersonal connections. Let me tell you a third story. Now, this is already an established company. And they sent Eastern European CEO to Sweden. He did so well in Eastern Europe that he was relocated to Sweden to take care of the branch there. He came in the office and told his personal assistant, please prepare a coffee for me and bring me the file for that company and the file for that company. Now, I don't know how many of you worked with the Swedes, but they are very egalitarian. So guess what the personal assistant told him? The coffee machine is over there, you prepare it yourself, and tell me why do you need that file and that file. Now, can you imagine the Eastern European CEO? She was like, whoa, what's with this arrogance? I am the boss here. How can a subordinate treat me like that? Well, yeah, it's cultural difference. We value different things. If we are aware of them, we might move over the discomfort. We will never become egalitarian if we are raised in a hierarchical society, but we might be aware of what other people value. Now, please raise your hand if you believe this is important, that a manager should have at hand all the answers to his subordinates' questions. Do you think it is important for a manager to have all the answers to whatever his or her subordinate asks? Nobody? Okay, good. This is cultural. As less than 20% of the Swedes, Dutch, and Americans believe that's important. And more than 60% of the Italians, Indonesians, and Japanese believe that's important. So this is researched and proven. So when we say manager, we mean different things across the culture. The manager has different roles across the cultures. If a Japanese would go to Sweden, he would waste too much time on the unnecessary things. And vice versa. If a Swede would go to Japan, he would be disqualified right away if he focuses on the wrong things. That's how culture works. Now, what about diplomacy? The person in white sitting on the floor is the Prime Minister of Thailand, or was at that point. And he's sitting on the floor. He's the second most important person in Thailand. And do you know why he's sitting on the floor? Because he has a meeting with the king, who's the most important person in Thailand, and the hierarchy has to be seen, has to be observed, has to be emphasized. Now, the third person here that stays in line was the Prime Minister of Sweden. And he's staying in line to withdraw money from an ATM. Did any of you see this in Romania? Did you ever see a minister staying in line to withdraw money? Yeah, me neither. It's so uncommon, it's so unimaginable. Now, what about Sarkozy here? We have him staying in an office with the status symbols all over. The power is emphasized because France is also a hierarchical society, and you have to see the power. What about the official visits? And here we have the Prime Minister of Sweden, the next one, that comes to China in an official visit. Now, you might observe his clothes. And it's nice that before me the clothes were mentioned, if the clothes matter. Yes, they matter. They are symbols of status. So it is offensive for the Chinese to receive a person that is supposed to be high status, but doesn't display the status. What about other interactions? Here we have Obama trying to do something that is inappropriate in Myanmar. Here we have Bill Gates, and look, it's not just what he did, it's that the Koreans really made a big fuss about it. How come a business person disrespects so much a president? How is that possible? If you think, what do all these pictures that I've showed you, what do they all have in common? This is the tip of the iceberg. Well, they all have in common the fact that they are seen. They are on the seen layers of culture. They are in the symbols, they are in the rituals. We can notice them. We can mimic them if needed. We can make a database out of them and say, okay, in Romania you should shake hands. In Myanmar you should not kiss the women. In whatever country you should do that. So these can be observed and can be learned. But if we don't understand the values, it's just automatic work, and you might confuse them. You might think that, okay, I'm in Taiwan, it should be like China. It's not. I'm in Hong Kong, also not like China. So you might mix them. That's why Professor Hofstede focused on the values. And he created this nice model, the Hofstede's six-dimensional model on culture, in which he opposes the values that the different societies have. And now I will tell them briefly to you so that you also have an image. The first one is power distance. Do we prefer to organize our society in a hierarchical way or in an egalitarian way? The second one, individualism versus collectivism. Do we expect that the individual will take care of himself or herself? Or we expect that the individual will be part of a large group that takes care of himself or herself in exchange for the loyalty. The third dimension is masculinity versus femininity. What motivates people? Is it performance? Is it achieving goals, or rather a harmonious lifestyle, harmonious relationships, getting along? The fourth is uncertainty avoidance. Are we afraid of the future coming, or we try to control it as much as possible by creating institutions? The fifth one is long-term orientation, or are we able to create plans that exceed our lives, or we have a historical point of view and we look only for the next quarter, we look only ahead for the next assignment, 2 years, 4 years. And the last one is indulgence versus restraint, which is, do we consider that it's sinful to have our impulses fulfilled, or we restrain them and we live a restrained life? Now, I touched them very, very lightly, but it was such a nice experience today here, hearing from all the diplomats, hearing from all the business people. And then, just to give you some examples, the self-deprecating behavior, or let's say the self-deprecating words that you heard also from Mr. Mokoc. I hope I'm telling his... No. Markoc. No. Fits here. Very good. He was very, very precise. It's just a feature of the Romanian restraint on this cultural dimension. What about being afraid of taking risks? Yeah, it fits here. Romania scores very high on uncertainty avoidance. Of course, taking risks is not something natural. And now, when you bring in management techniques from US, from UK, from Japan, and you try to put them on the Romanian culture, you will miss some things. And guess what? This thing that we, as Romanians, believe that everything that comes from outside is better, fits also here. What is the real solution here is trying to understand the culture that we have, trying to understand what are the good things that we can use from our cultures. And as Mr. Valentin Preda mentioned in the morning, and I really appreciate his efforts on doing this, that he is creating a training school in which, yes, the people that work in different governments will be trained, the new students, the professors. Once we get to understand our culture, then we know what to take from the foreign management techniques. We will not import everything. Also, the Dutch techniques are very, let's say, famous in Romania, and not all the times they work, because they don't fit the culture. The fact that the manager from Bila screamed at the person fits the culture very well. It's just that if the behavior of the national culture is not aligned with what the company wants to do, yeah, you will have these misses. You will lose. Now, if you group these dimensions, you can cluster them. So, and based on the clusters, you can make predictions. You can make diagnoses. You can make evaluations. In the contest cluster, in which we have USA, we have UK, what is happening is that the liberals will be framed as socialists. And the socialists will lose because they don't have an appeal to the population. Socialism will never work in US, and the more the Democrats focus on being socialists, the more they will lose ground. Another thing, as one of the effects of the contest culture, is the fact that the polarization will kill the truth. The polarization between the different sides will end up of having a blurred truth. So a blurred truth. You will not know which is the truth. And the people there will not know, which is actually happening. You can see that. In the second cluster, we have the well-oiled machine. We have the Germany, Hungary, all the Central Europe fits there. The fear of the societal chaos will leave room to extreme right. Going further, in the solar system cultures, where we have France, Italy, Spain, this societal chaos will lead to even more centralization because they are very hierarchical, which will disconnect from the people and eventually will lead to revolutions. The network cultures. These are the ones like Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, Norway. For them, things will be easier as long as they will bring the polarizing parties in. As long as everybody discusses their point of view, things will go smoother. But it will not be uncomfortable. It will not be comfortable. Just to end, because we are part of the EU, in EU, we have all these culture clusters. We used to have 5 culture clusters, but not anymore, because the UK exited. Culture explains why Brexit was possible, and explains why it's very doubtful that we will have a Swexit or a Frexit or a Nexit. It's very doubtful that these things will happen. Culture explains it. Now with that gone, we still have challenges in the EU, making all the wishes of all these countries from the different clusters work together. So the word for the next, let's say, half a century is that we count on the wisdom of the diplomats, on the wisdom of you, to understand that whatever might seem natural to you, or might seem that is the right way, might be opposite, might be not welcomed by somebody else, with whom you have to work, with whom we have to find a way to keep it peaceful. Thank you very much.